Researchers in Ohio found toxic metals are being used in toy trinkets. I'm Jack Atherton.
And I'm Cherie Pallello. And the latest find is even more dangerous than the lead concerns raised just a few years ago. Newsway's Eric Flack is live tonight with our #1 story. Eric.
And Cherie, just tonight, Walmart announced it was pulling some products off its shelves over concerns about a toxic metal called cadmium and the harm it could be doing to your children.
At Shannon's All About Dance in Edgewood, you'll find some of the finest little princesses around.
Oh, I think she was probably maybe 2 when she started wanting to play with all the little, wands and the crowns.
But tonight, a new and serious health warning, leaving many parents worried that the land of make-believe could lead to very real problems.
It is frustrating because, most of the time they love that kind of stuff.
Children's jewelry made with a toxic metal called cadmium could pose serious health risks, according to testing done by a professor at Ashland University in Ohio. Based on his research, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission is now investigating the sale of charm bracelets and pendants with extraordinarily high levels of cadmium at some of the nation's largest retailers, including Walmart, which tonight pulled this Princess and the Frog pendant, dollar stores, and the jewelry chain Claire's, where 9-year-old Katiana Miller and her 3 friends just bought bracelets.
You just don't know what to give your kids.
Candy Miller says the news is especially frustrating because Chinese toy manufacturers reportedly turned to cadmium to replace lead when concerns over its health risks led to a massive recall.
Definitely frustrating because, like I said, you don't know what is safe and what isn't safe. You think it's safe and then you find out tomorrow, no, it's not safe now.
Cadmium, which is known to cause cancer, is listed as the 7th most hazardous substance found in the environment, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control. Reporting live from Fairfax, I'm Eric Flack, News 5.
Eric, that parent there was just mentioning this. I guess the real question tonight, how do parents figure out which toys to keep from their kids and which ones are fine?
It's a tricky question, Shree. Cadmium is regulated in painted toys, but not kids' jewelry, which is the problem here, So there's no really way to know which are the most dangerous for your children. The head of the Consumer Product Safety Commission is going to issue a warning tomorrow to Chinese toy makers, saying the U.S. is not going to trade one hazardous material for another. So expect the government to crack down on this.
There is a potential new health scare that could threaten your children. Makers of children's jewelry out of China now using cadmium in production. We're told you can find it in items like this Disney Princess and the Frog, a pendant on screen here, and other toys for kids. From the Fox Medical A team, Dr. Mark Siegel now with me. Good morning to you, Doc.
Good morning, Bill.
Cadmium is what?
Cadmium is a very soft compound. It's like lead. It's found in the earth. It's easy to work with. So the problem is, back in 2008, Congress said you can't put lead in any more of these toys. So Chinese manufacturers have been slipping cadmium in.
Cadmium then replaced the lead and they continue to make the product.
But I got to tell you, Bill, this is a big story, and I'll tell you why. I looked at this first, and I thought, here's another story about trace elements, something that's been added, a little bit of this, tiny risk. This is a big risk. Cadmium is 10 times more toxic than lead or mercury. We spend so much time worrying about mercury. Cadmium is 10 times more toxic. It can cause brittle bones. It can hurt your kidneys. It can cause digestive problems. And the worst part, in young kids, it can cause developmental problems in delay in school. This is a big problem.
It's a carcinogen. Like lead, it can hinder brain development in the very young.
That's right. That's right. And I'm glad you brought up the cancer risk, because there's a big cancer risk with this. Now look, young kids have a charm bracelet. They suck on the charm. The World Health Organization discovered that if you suck on one of these charms over a day, you have as much cadmium you're taking in as they recommend you get in an entire year. This is a big risk.
You walked in the studio and said, you know what, I was looking at the story and it's a bigger deal than I thought it was.
Well, because the charms, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the charms have 80 to 90% cadmium. That's a lot. That's a lot. And who's regulating this? We need a new law. Actually, the feds have a law that says you can't use it in paints. Let me explain how this is used. Cadmium is used in industrial processes. We add it to paint. It's added to electrolytes. It's added to electroplating. It can be used for charms for plastics and metals. But the problem is it's only regulated in paints. So these guys get away with it. Of course, I've said previously the FDA doesn't have enough teeth over there in China to begin with. But we need laws to prevent these things from selling. I think this is very dangerous.
I'm reading it's one of the top 10 hazardous substances. I mean, how would you as a parent even know that it was in a product you were buying for your child?
That's actually the biggest problem of all. That's why I think the feds have to go after this. You know what? And the other problem is your kid could get exposed to this and you might not even know it. I mean, they're not doing well in school and that's all you figure out. I mean, you may not have a problem with the kidneys. You can actually get dramatic problems like broken bones or your kid gets diarrhea, but you might not know what it is. You can go to 10 doctors, they're not going to tell you.
Well,
we need to nip this in the bud and get this from out of the products.
You find it in bracelets, charm bracelets, jewelry for kids oftentimes. The AP did a study. They took products from New York, Ohio, Texas, and California. More than 100 products. They found 12% of the pieces that they found, or tested anyway, contained this cadmium.
And you know something else, Bill? What if I told you that zinc is almost totally safe?
Would not know that.
And that's what they should be using. This is another example of some toxic product being slipped into what our kids have in another country. I'm very, very concerned about this, but I don't think that it's a minor problem. I think it's 10 times greater problem than mercury. I mean, all of our people out there talking about thimerosal and mercury, we should be talking about cadmium.
All right, 2 more questions for you. Is cadmium cheaper than, say, zinc, would it be?
And that's another issue. That's why they're using it. It's much cheaper than zinc. It's cheaper than lead. It's one of the cheapest substances around. It's a heavy metal, so it's very damaging to the brain and to the nerves. That's its primary problem. And that's why I said it gives kids problems with thinking. We're talking about developmental brains here. These brains are in evolution. They don't need toxins.
I see. I said 2 more questions. I apologize. There's 3 more. This is number 2. You say we need a new law? How can we restrict what China's doing?
Well, we need a law on our end. Just like Congress passed a law in 2008 that you're not allowed to sell products over the counter that have lead in them, we need the same law to apply to cadmium. Cadmium is much more dangerous. And second point, I think the FDA has got to do more. We need to put more teeth into the FDA to go over to China and look at those plants and say, what are you putting in? I hear your point.
Apparently there's a big speech by an American regulator in Hong Kong to address this very issue. Your message to parents who are watching is what?
Well, my message to parents is not to panic. I'm not really saying that you're likely to have had this. But if you have a charm bracelet or your kid has a charm bracelet, you should look very carefully at this and really, really track it down. The products that this is found in are now listed. You can get this on a federal website, on the FDA, and on the other federal websites.
FDA.gov? What is that?
That's FDA.gov. Well, you can track this and figure out if your kid's been exposed to it, but it's most likely if it's in a charm bracelet.
In 2007, it was found that toys produced in China contained high levels of lead, and that prompted a product safety clampdown in the United States. But recently, tests have shown that some Chinese manufacturers have used an even more toxic metal, cadmium, to make children's jewelry.
Children's jewelry imported from China has come under the spotlight in the United States after an investigation by the Associated Press found it contained the toxic metal cadmium. Cadmium is a known carcinogen that can affect the kidney and brain development in children. Its effects are worse than lead, a metal that was at the center of the toxic toy scandal in 2007. The Associated Press organized lab testing of 103 pieces of children's jewelry in stores from New York, Ohio, Texas, and California. The test showed 12% of the pieces contained at least 10% cadmium by weight. A Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer charm had as much as 91% cadmium. Chinese toy and trinket makers apparently are using cadmium, a metal that's shiny, easy to work with, and cheap, instead of lead. In the United States, there are strict limits for lead levels in children's products, but there's no limit on the content of cadmium in jewelry. The U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission said it will start an investigation on children's jewelry imported from China. Retail giant Walmart and accessories chain Claire's, both of which sell jewelry found by the AP to contain cadmium, say they will voluntarily remove the products from sale.
We are talking about cadmium, and experts say it's showing up in Chinese jewelry that is all over the United States right now. They found it in major chain stores and even movie-themed products. Health experts say cadmium is a known cancer-causing substance, and children don't have to swallow this to be exposed. It can develop cancer simply by just putting it into their mouth. That's how dangerous it is. Now, the Consumer Product Safety Commission now says they are opening a huge investigation so that they can quickly take action to protect your children.